Okay, so many of you know Josh. In the event that you do not, we are in for a treat. He is a masterful instructor, the greatest teacher I've ever had. And contrary to popular belief, he was not my technical official teacher in nutrition school. We were both students. Clearing the air there. So Josh Gitalis is a clinical nutritionist and functional medicine practitioner. He runs a Toronto-based private practice with a worldwide client base. I'd say like everyone who's one of Josh's clients, raise your hand, but that would, client, practitioner confidentiality. But I have a feeling many of you know him. He is a recognized expert in integrative healthcare, merging the best of functional medicine and integrative therapeutics. As a leader in his field, Josh has taught clinical nutrition for several natural health colleges, including the Academy of Culinary Nutrition, OBVI, and also runs the Functional Nutrition Certification Program. He is the first and only, can I say, clinical nutritionist in the country of Canada who has been certified by the Institute of Functional Medicine. And that makes him extra awesome. So without further ado, I present you Mr. Josh Gitalis.
Today, we're going to be talking about how to build your resilience. As I mentioned in the intro, it's all about this wiggle room, right? We all have this wiggle room, and I'm going to basically define resilience in 100 different ways, and I'm going to tell you how you can increase your resilience in about 100 different ways as we go along here. So by the end, I hope that you feel empowered, that you can take some of what you learned and get going on it right away. Hello, Homo sapiens. That, of course, is the name of humans, and it actually comes from the root wise man. Sorry, ladies, I know like pretty much every picture I have on my screen here is of a lady, but I guess they weren't thinking about both sexes back then and being politically correct. But anyway, we are amazing organisms. We have multiple systems operating at the same time, doing so many different things, all working to help keep us strong and alive and able to pass on our genes to the next generation. We have 1 million new white blood cells being made every 10 seconds. We have 20 million red blood cells being made every 10 seconds. We have 30 million new platelets being made every 10 seconds. Just think how much more new stuff's going to be made by the end of this discussion. We have 1 to 5 of our cells becoming cancerous every day, and we have an amazing immune system to make sure that that doesn't get out of control. Our heart beats 100,000 times a day. It starts before we're born, and it doesn't stop until the end of days. We have 100,000 miles of blood vessels, which could wrap around the earth 2 times. Our femur, which is the biggest bone in your body, in your upper leg, is stronger than concrete and lighter than concrete. Our liver is constantly working. It's got over 500 jobs. It's sometimes called the humanizer. It makes sure that we stay clean and healthy. It's the filter of our body, and it does a lot of other stuff as well. Our brain is an incredible mechanism. It can hold up to 200 exabytes of information. I'm sure many of you haven't even heard that measure before. That could contain the whole entire digital world that is occurring right now in time. Our cartilage is smoother than glass. It has a friction coefficient 5 times less than ice, which means if you went skating on an ice rink that was made out of cartilage, you would go 16 times faster. That might be a little bit too fast for some people. Our hand is an engineering marvel, right? It has 29 bones, 17 muscles, 2 main arteries, 48 nerves, and 123 ligaments. And it all operates so that you can click on your keyboard so that you can watch this conference today. And we are humans, an organism that can live all over the world. We have an incredible ability to adapt to our environment. For example, we have the Nenets here who live in northern Arctic Russia. They like to eat reindeer meat, which is raw frozen, fish, salmon, even cranberries when they're in season. And then to contrast that, we have the Maasai who live in East Africa, who are eating raw milk, raw meat, raw blood, raw butter. And actually only recently they started to farm some corn, but living in completely different parts of the world. That is the human. That is how much we are adaptable to our environment. And not only are we adaptable, but we can thrive in different environments. And I like to use these cultural examples, these different people living in different parts of our world that we call planet Earth, to show us what's actually possible, to help us understand what we can actually do with the human body, how we can change our health. A lot of us have been conditioned to think that as we age, we just slowly get worse and worse and worse. But I want to flip that upside down and change the whole idea around aging by the end of our discussion here today and understand what's possible. And we've seen this multiple times in history, right? So the Wright brothers in 1903 were the first ones to get flight off the Earth. Now, it was only for a number of seconds the first time they did it, but once we had that in our brain that we were able to do that, it became possible. And now, well, maybe not right this moment, we're flying all over the world in these incredible jets. It's just an incredible thing that humans have been able to do. You know, it was said before 1954 that no human could run faster, a mile faster than 4 minutes. And in 1954, Roger Bannister broke that record by like 0.6 of a millisecond. And then the 4-minute barrier had been broken. And, you know, over 1,000 athletes came after him to do it because now they knew it was possible. Rosa Parks was the first person in 1955 to resist segregation when she refused to sit where she was supposed to sit on the bus, which fueled a whole movement and showed that it was possible to be equal in society. And another one, the Fosbury flop. I don't know if some of you are familiar with this, but there was one year, 1968 in the Olympics, where this guy, Dick Fosbury, realized that for the high jump, he can get a lot higher if he landed on his back. And he just blew everyone out of the water, and they called it the Fosbury flop. So essentially, what we're doing here is we're taking old paradigms and we're making new paradigms. We want to make new paradigms and leave in the past the old paradigms, something that we've done in history multiple times, right? So we used to think that we were the center of the universe. I think fittingly so for humans, that the Earth was the center, and all the planets and the sun revolved around the Earth. That was called the geocentric model. We then realized that obviously that was ridiculous. And we realized that the heliocentric model was the actual way of the universe, and it became the new paradigm. And it changed a lot of thinking around astronomy and the globe and how our planets work together and how the world worked, and put a completely new idea in every single person on the planet's mind. Now, currently, or something that we're trying to move away from, is an organ-centric type of paradigm, right? Where we have a specialty for every different organ in the body. We've got a cardiologist for the heart. We've got a neurologist for the brain. We've got a rheumatologist for the joints. We've got a gastroenterologist for the digestive system, where we start at the doctor and then they send us to different specialties, but they're just focusing on one organ. But we know that everything is connected, right? We need a new paradigm. And this is what I've been practicing now for about 12 years, is the patient-centric model, where instead of looking at one specific part of the body, like we've all seen those medical shows, right? Where they're just kind of like doing their rounds and they don't even look at the patient, and they grab the chart and they say, oh, this person has pneumonia. You know, what's the differential diagnosis, right? Like in Grey's Anatomy or one of those shows. But these are people, right? And there's many different factors. There's many different things that play into a specific symptom. And there's many different things around them too that's going to play into where they are today. So for example, the community that you're in, the environment, I think that's becoming more important than ever right now, right? The societal impact of it, our social relationships. I know we're going to hear more about this later from Jason, talking about this in great detail. What about the genetic makeup, the unique signature or book of information in each one of us? What about the homes that we live in, right? We spend most of our times indoors these days. So what's around us? You know, Megan and I in the past did a course, Healthy at Home, talking about how to make your home safe rather than toxic, because that's where we spend most of our time. Well, most of our time we spend at home, and work is probably the two main places. So, you know, what's around you? Do you have spaces that make you feel good? Do you have spaces that are quiet? Do you have, you know, a kitchen where you can make your food appropriately? Do you have, you know, plants in your environment? You know, what kind of art do you have on your walls or don't have? Do you have nice natural light, right? All these things that play into our mental health. And, you know, of course, what's on your plate? You know, when you get admitted into a hospital or even go see the doctor, they're rarely asking you about your diet, which is, of course, a big thing of what Megan and I do constantly. So we need this new paradigm, this patient-centered, this individualization. We're moving towards there. A lot of you know about these concepts like epigenetics and personalized nutrition and individualization. But let's dive into what is resilience. Like, what is this thing that we're talking about today? I just want you to take a moment where you're sitting. I can see you all in your nice comfy chairs joining me along here. And just think to yourself, like, when you think of the word resilience, what picture comes to your mind, right? And it's going to be probably different for each one of us. I know when I was putting this together, there was just a few things that came to my mind right away. And those are the pictures that I put up here. So the first one is these guys. How cute are these little penguins, right? Have any of you seen the documentary March of the Penguins? That documentary is just mind-blowing. How far these parents go to, I think is it the man or the woman, Meg? In March of the Penguins. Is it the man? I think the man goes and travels like all the way across this frozen tundra to the ocean to get food, and then brings it all the way back. Some of them die along the way, but a lot of them make it, and then they basically regurgitate all this food up for their mates and their babies. And it's just an incredible example of resilience. And that's resilience of this organism within their environment. This is a great picture of resilience. You know, when you see a weed growing out of a crack in the concrete, or just a plant growing in the middle of nowhere, like, how resilient did this tree have to be to actually grow here? The health of a forest, an old growth forest, or the Amazon rainforest, or this robust environment with many different species living together cohesively, is another amazing example of resilience, where we're not just looking at the individual organism, but we're looking at an ecosystem as a whole to help everyone out and everything in that ecosystem. And then, as many of you know, I love herbs, I love weeds, I love medicine from nature. And the dandelion is a resilient flower, and they just grow anywhere. And the roots are incredible medicine for tuning up the liver, for keeping us healthy, and they just grow everywhere, right? So that's another picture of resilience that I get. So how do we increase our resilience? I guess this is the question, right? Like, this is the number one thing that we want to answer, and the thing that I'm building up the suspense for as we go along here. So what I want you to think about is a bank account. I use this analogy a lot with my clients, and this is our resilience bank account. Our body is our resilience bank account. And we want to put as much money into that bank account as possible. We'll call them health dollars. Now, typically, when we go from the black to the red, when we're bankrupt or when we've used up all those dollars, that's when I equate as the point where we actually develop symptoms, right? Where we have, digestive upset, some pain, fatigue, sleep issues, anything that we could put on the list of symptoms, right? When we're just on the other side in the black, we have no symptoms, but it doesn't mean that we're not far away from getting symptoms. We want to get as far away as possible. And that's what I talk about when I'm talking about the resilience bank account, putting health dollars in the health account. I'll give you another example. When I work with my clients, we get to a point that maybe they don't feel symptoms. And I say, okay, now we're just beginning. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we have to build up the health dollars in your health account because we still have a lot of work to do, right? We want to make sure that if you get hit with something at some point, you have those dollars to spend. So that's what the resilience bank account is all about. Now, to define resilience, it is the mental and physical ability to easily and effectively handle stressors and recover quickly from them. We can't avoid stressors. It's just impossible. We are in a world of stressors. And in fact, humans have evolved to be able to handle and adapt and actually become stronger from stressors. The thing that we want to be able to do is adapt as quick and as effectively as possible so we can bounce back from those stressors. So for example, if someone needs to go in to the hospital for a surgery, well, prepare the body as good as you can beforehand so that your outcome is much better and you have a much higher chance at recovery and doing really well in the surgery, right? Obviously, surgery is not optimal, but we can prepare the body to get there. And that's all about building up resilience and making sure you're strong and ready for that surgery when the time comes. Now, from the medical perspective, when we're looking in the medical world, one of the first discussions of this slowing of the aging process was brought forth by Dr. James Fries. It was in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1980. So not that long ago. Well, I guess about 40 years now, almost 40 years, or just over 40 years. And he put forth the idea that we don't necessarily have to decline on a regular basis. So like you can see the curve here in the 1900s, it was just a slow decline of people basically of dying, right? And a lot of it had to do with infectious disease. We made a lot of headway in that category. But you can see that in 1980, a lot of that was improved. And there was still this gradual curve of people kind of falling off. And then you can see the next curve over is called the ideal curve. And that's where we just live a long time and then we just die one day. And that's what's called compression of morbidity. Instead of being sick for a long time, we want to be sick for a very short time and then move on to our next job, so to speak. Now, his ideas were highly questioned at the time. It was like totally out there to be saying this because everyone just thought aging was like a normal process and you just kind of got worse and worse and worse as time went on. So are we equipped for this? Are we equipped for allowing our bodies to stay nice and strong until the end? Well, our organs have a capacity 4 to 10 times what is required. So, I'm sitting here in this chair. If I all of a sudden had to get up and start doing lunges and start to do our workout at the break or something, my heart could kick in. It could increase its capacity and workforce substantially to help deal with that stressor of the increased demands for the body. Someone has to be drinking for 30, 40 years before they get liver cirrhosis and need a liver transplant. An individual's, arteries need to be closed 90% before they, have a blockage. Kidneys, people on dialysis typically need 80% of their kidneys to be damaged before they go on dialysis. We have about a teaspoon of sugar in our blood at any one given time, but someone can go and drink a big gulp from the 7-Eleven that has 20 teaspoons of sugar in there, and their body's able to adapt to that, and they're able to control their blood glucose. So this reserve of our organs allows homeostasis to be challenged. That's what it's all about, and that's what we want to build up when we're building up our resilience. Now, there's this concept called hormesis, which tells us that a little bit of stress is actually a good thing. Too little, not so good. Too much, not so good. And when we have a little bit of a stressor, that's what really helps the body get stronger. And I think most of us understand this concept when it comes to exercise, right? You go to the gym, you're literally damaging your muscles, right? When you lift weights, you're tearing them apart, hopefully not too much. And then when you have time to recover, they're able to grow back, and they grow back stronger. And part of that is them growing back bigger as well, which is why we can build muscle and build muscle mass. So that's the hormetic effect. That's how a little bit of stress actually helps us to become stronger. Now, machines, like the human body, are meant to run. We're meant to be worked. We don't want premature organ dysfunction from disuse. We don't want it to go downhill from disuse or overuse. We want to use it or lose it, right? We've all heard this term. If we don't use it, we're going to seize up like the Tin Man, where our joints are not going to be able to work. We're not going to be able to keep this thing running really well. We want to run, not rest. And this is, again, the concept that James Fries was talking about in his paper in 1980. That was so out there. So we want to add life to our years, not necessarily have a focus on adding years to our life. Right? We don't want to be in disability, but still be alive, right? That's the idea, is that we want to be nice and strong and have ability our whole life. So because James was so questioned in this idea, he decided to run a study. How are we doing with timing?
Great.
Okay, yeah. He decided to do a study, and so he did that first paper in 1980, and he decided that he wanted to prove his peers incorrect, that he was totally out there. So he found a number of 63-year-olds and who wanted to enroll in the study. And there was two groups. There was a group that were at low risk for disease. In other words, they had lots of good, healthy habits, which we'll look at in a moment. And there was a group that was at more of a moderate risk, and then a group that was at higher risk. So 3 groups, sorry. And he looked at them over 15 years to see what would happen to these individuals. And what he found was that there was a substantial difference in the 2 groups. There was a 7-year postponement of disability. And this is starting with people at the age of 63. So he concluded the study 15 years later, and then wrote up the paper in 1998. This is a chart from the paper, and he showed that we can have a compression of morbidity. We can actually decrease a lot of these risk factors, and we can make a big difference in our health. Now, that he started with 63-year-olds. Just imagine if you practice this your whole life. But it also illustrates that you could really start at any age and make a difference, which is good news for us as well. So the variation of age was shown to be modifiable with fitness, exercise works, Intelligence was a really important factor as well. Social interactions, which we're going to talk about more later today, really important for longevity. Memory. And essentially, this all showed that we could go against the gradient. Instead of a linear decline, we could actually do more of a drop off. And this is Marge. She was profiled in the Blue Zones book. At the time, she was 103. Her daily exercise was weightlifting and riding a stationary bicycle for 7 to 8 miles at 25 miles per hour. And she volunteered in 7 organizations. Look at her go. So we essentially want to go from this to this. And the bottom line is it's a personal choice that's important. You can choose the Big Mac, right? Or you can choose the big plate of vegetables, right? That's what it's all about. It's up to you. It's your choice. And it's time for a paradigm shift. It's time to change our minds about how the body ages and about how we actually move through our life. We're not so into what's called anti-aging. Anti-aging is this buzzword. It's used a lot in the industry, but we want to age. We just want to age really, really well. And, you know, back in the day, weightlifting was considered, again, a fringe type of activity. Guys like this were freak shows, and now there's gyms on every corner. So this change is possible. It just takes a little bit of time, and I think each one of us doing our part is going to make that change. Now, what essentially do we want to change here? How do we increase the resilience? And we're going to go to the microscopic here for a moment to understand the macroscopic. This is your cell. This is an incredible little machine with lots of little factories inside, all doing really important activities. You can see the red little, you know, sphere-like thing there is our mitochondria. It makes our energy. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but really important that we get this thing working optimally. And essentially, we want to look at what's called the resilience continuum. On the left side of your screen here, you have decreased resilience, which is really when the cell has very poor biological efficiency. It has a very poor ability taking our food, right, our energy and what's in food, and converting it into usable energy by you to actually carry out your daily activities. And someone with a lot of resilience has a lot of biological efficiency. So they can do a lot with a little bit. An efficient person is someone who can not necessarily have tons of resources, but be able to do everything that they need to do with those resources, right? Does that make sense? And here's where we can make deposits to our personal bank of resilience, right? This is the point of entry for building resilience. These are the 7 different systems. I'm going to touch on each one of them. There's tons I could say about each one of these. I could talk about hours for each one of these. In fact, I have full courses on each one of these. So we're just going to touch on the key sticky points with these ones. But this is where I'm looking for dysfunction, and this is where I'm trying to restore function with my clients, and where you have a tremendous ability to do that yourself. So the first one is assimilation. I'm going to go through each one of these individually, so I'll just go through these quickly now. Assimilation, which is digestion. Defense, which is all about immunity, and that's a big topic today. Structural integrity, like our musculoskeletal system. Energy, how our mitochondria work. Communication, our nervous system and sending messages all around the body. Elimination and detoxification. And transport, how we actually get all these chemicals around the body through our cardiovascular system. So our first one is assimilation. This would be focusing in on the digestive tract. This is where we break down food to be used for energy, structure, and bioactive chemicals. Now, when you go to the gas station, if you have a car, usually you have 3 options with different octanes. I've actually looked up what octane means. I still don't fully understand what it is, but essentially they're just more efficient forms of fuel. You've got the 87, the 89, and then the 93, and they're more expensive the higher you get. if you only had one car the rest of your life, which of these fuel grades would you select? I think the answer is pretty obvious. Now, this is me. I'm trying to climb this mountain, and I'm going to ask you, if I want to take the energy that's in this Big Mac, how efficient is my digestive tract going to be at extracting everything I need to help me get up that mountain? Versus if I was going to try to convert this apple into energy to get me up the mountain, right? What's a little bit closer to human biology, right? To a living food? I think the answer is pretty obvious once again. So when we're looking at digestion, I'm going to be plotting, or when we go through each one of these different systems, I'm going to be showing you what increases resilience and what decreases resilience. And you can look at that, and as an exercise, you can actually see how many of the things am I doing that decrease resilience, and how many of the things am I not doing that increase resilience, and you can start to make some changes. So with decreased resilience, eating on the go, we're never meant to eat so fast, eating processed foods, drugs and alcohol, really hard on the digestive tract, mindful eating, and whole foods, really important for digestion. And I think I'm gonna have to speed up here a little bit because I'm running out of time. 7 minutes, oh my God. Okay, our next system is defense, and this is immunity, a big topic right now. You know, I've posted a lot about it on my Instagram and in other places because of what we're dealing right now with COVID-19. So it helps to protect us from our environment inside and out and identify self from non-self. So one of the most important things for immunity, right? Like I'm just trying to get right to the important stuff here with what's going to help each system is sleep. Sleep is so important. This was a study that was done where they gave vaccines are a good model because they help us to understand how we build immunity. And they gave vaccines to these participants at 0, 8, and 16 weeks. One group was allowed to sleep normally after they got their vaccine. The other group was not allowed to sleep that night. And the group that was not allowed to sleep had much lower ability to make antibodies to the antigen presented in their bloodstream. And you can see that that's a pretty substantial jump in immunity, and it makes a huge difference. So sleep is a really, really important factor in us building immunity. So lack of sleep, no downtime to relax and recover, nutrient deficiencies, poor diet, lack of movement really help or really decrease our resilience and use up a lot of those health dollars, while restful sleep, nutrient dense foods, exercise, and eating the colors of the rainbow are so important for the immune system. What does the immune system of a plant look like? Because you kind of are what you eat, right? Well, this little critter right here has a wonderful protection, right? You don't want to get too close to it because it's not going to feel so good. But this blueberry right here has no protection. It's the phytonutrients in that blueberry that protect it, that give it the blue pigment. These are the immune system of the blueberries, right? And they don't just come in blue, they come in every different color. So if you want to protect your immune system, eat the colors of the rainbow. That's where the protection comes from. And again, I could talk about each one of these foods on this slide and what the phytonutrients are in them. But bottom line is just eat lots of color and your immune system is going to be very, very happy. Most people don't eat enough color. This is called the phytonutrient gap. 8 in 10 Americans have a phytonutrient gap. They don't eat enough green, red, white, purple, blue, yellow, and orange. This has been studied extensively. And so what I'm saying here, and I mentioned before, is you're not just are what you eat, but you are what you eat eats. And that goes for animals and plants, right? Those plants are actually eating and pulling up the different nutrients in their environment, in their soil, to help protect them. Okay, moving on to the third, it's structural integrity. This is the musculoskeletal system. So if we do this conference again next year, we're gonna ask you guys to send in a video of you doing some tricks like this to see how the musculoskeletal system is working. But it's the ability to handle mechanical stressors, right? And sometimes deficiencies point to sufficiencies. I like to look at those types of things to help me determine what is actually needed. So an interesting little fact is that in zero gravity, bone loss can occur 1 to 2% per month. The gravity of the earth actually helps us to maintain bone density, right? Another example is when there's extra stress, that can increase bone density as well. So professional tennis players can have up to 30% more bone in their dominant arm. So what does that tell us about stressing our muscles and stressing our bones in terms of building up bone density? It's that bone density can be gained through weight-bearing movement. Very, very important, okay? We also know that any form of exercise counts. So, you know, when they say like park your car in the furthest part of the parking lot, there's actually something to that, because the more physical activity you do, the lower risk of death you have. I think that's a pretty good motivator to get off our bums and walk a little bit more. This is just a chart showing that those who had the most activity per day had the lowest risk of dying. We also know that if you have a strong body, you have a strong mind. It's really important for mental health and neurological health. We're going to learn more about that later. Thomas Jefferson said, if the body is feeble, the mind will not be strong. We need to move the body to have a good, strong mind. And for musculoskeletal, lack of movement is not good. And doing the right exercise for your body is really important. And I always say the best exercise is the one that you'll do. Next is energy, mitochondrial health, the powerhouse of the body. These are the guys that make our energy. I always think about energy as engineering in the Starship Enterprise. For those of you who might have watched Star Trek back in the day, once engineering's down, the whole ship is down. And that's similar for the mitochondria in our cells. Now, the biggest issue for our mitochondria are toxins. And of course, Megan and I have spoken extensively about this through podcasts and webinars and all sorts of places. So you can learn more there. But pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, heavy metals, persistent organic pollutants are all horrible for our mitochondria, and they slowly deplete our energy and use up lots of our health dollars. Movement, especially high intensity, helps us to increase our mitochondria. And interestingly enough, but fasting the right way also helps to increase our mitochondria. Communication, our nervous system, the outside world to the inside world, and throughout hormones, neurotransmitters, and other messengers help to communicate all throughout the body. Imbalances in blood sugar and nutrient deficiencies are really damaging to the nervous system and can really affect it. And meditation, mindfulness, downtime, finding a passion and interest. Megan's really going to get into some of these things later on. Caloric restriction, movement, and nature. Really important for keeping our nervous system nice and healthy. Now we have 2 more systems, and then we're going to have some time for a few questions. But the 6th one is elimination, being able to get rid of our biological byproducts. Some we make inside of us, some we get from the outside, but we have to be able to properly eliminate it through what are called the channels of elimination. And the channels of elimination are the bowel, the kidneys. So we gotta poop every day, we gotta pee multiple times a day. Our skin, sweating is really important. Lungs, we gotta exhale. And the mind. The mind can actually hold on to toxins quite efficiently. And our final system here is the transportation system, the cardiovascular system, which moves substances around the body. We got to get the oxygen from our lungs to all of the cells around our body. How are we going to do that? We got to get the nutrients from our digestive tract to all the cells around the body. And there was one really cool, I guess it was a couple different studies. There was first a study done looking at what was called a polypill. So for people who had a cardiovascular event, heart attack, or were at high risk, they usually put them on this cocktail of drugs, a diuretic, beta blocker, ACE inhibitor, statin. And they wanted to see if they could create like a poly pill to help reduce the risk before it happened, or even if someone had a cardiac event. And what they found was that when they combined a lot of these drugs, they could get upwards of a 70% decreased risk of having another cardiac event. Now, some other people came along and said, hey, you think we could do that with food? And they came up with something called the poly meal. And the poly meal involved, many of you are going to be happy to see what was actually included in the poly meal: wine, fish, dark chocolate, fruits and vegetables, garlic, almonds, and what they want to see if they can get a similar effect. And they got in upwards of 70% of a decreased risk of a cardiovascular event. They were able to mimic what the pill was doing with none of the side effects. They were getting a very high combined effect. Now, when most people look at this chart, for some reason, this is what they see. I still can't figure it out. I'm trying to suss that one out still, but I'll figure it out at some point. Sometimes we only see what we want to see. So finally, those are the points of entry. Those are some tips on how to really build up our health dollars in our health account. That's how we can get access. That's how we can build up our resilience. I love this quote by Henry David Thoreau. Nature is doing her best each moment to make us well. She exists for no other end. Do not resist. With the least inclination, we should not be sick. Now, I showed you some pictures earlier of images that came to my mind when it came to resilience. But one that comes to my mind over and over again is my late Bobby-Chana. She grew up in Poland. She was the survivor of the Holocaust. She survived by hiding out in the roof of a barn for 4 years. She eventually made it to Canada, had 3 wonderful children, and then those children had grandchildren. That's me. And that's what I think of when I think of resilience. Now, we all have different stories. We all have different histories. We all have generations and generations and generations that came before us, 2.6 million years of being Homo sapiens, humans on this planet. So we all have a story. Maybe some of them are more recent, maybe some of them are a long time ago, but we got here for a reason, and we've dealt with many different crazy things along the way. So with that, I want to thank you, and I hope that all of you work on improving your resilience and becoming the best people you can be health-wise and just living your own life. So I think we have some time for questions, right?
So my question was about the liver also being one of those major components for cleansing and detoxing. Because specifically in my situation, I lost 65 pounds in 6 months in a very healthy manner, eating right, changing my lifestyle, exercise. But now I've had blood work done and my liver is severely overworked. And they're relating that to my weight loss. So I put cinnamon and turmeric in my dandelion coffee. I try to do everything I can to detox, but I need to know what foods are best for also cleansing the liver. And is it truly weight loss can actually harm your liver?
Well, whenever we're looking at diet and just putting together certain protocols for people, we're thinking about 2 things. One, what do we got to take out, and what do we got to put in? Okay. So we have to take out all of the toxins, all the bad food, right? Make sure we're eating organic food so we're not getting in any extra chemicals that stress the liver. And then we want to put in a lot of those phytonutrients. So many of those things that I was mentioning and the colors in all those foods, each one of them work as antioxidants. They work to protect the liver. And then if we want to elevate that even another step, we want to think about using certain herbs that can help to cleanse and purge the liver as well. Now, since the liver does have 500 jobs, one of them is cleaning up debris. And when there's weight loss, there's a lot of stuff being broken down, like fat. And if there's too much fat being processed in the liver, it can overburden the liver, and there can be spillover, and it could cause what's called fatty liver. Sometimes it's called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So there are ways that you can work to help improve that. There's certain supplements, certain nutrients that can help with the fat emulsification in the liver. And the cool thing about the liver is that it's incredibly resilient, and it can grow back and it can repair itself. So as long as you haven't gone too far down what I call the slope of health or the resilience continuum, there's ways that you can recover that. It might have just been a little bit too quick and too much for the liver to handle at that time. And you might have just pushed its resilience a little bit. When we see elevated liver enzymes, it's telling us that that liver is being damaged.
My question was with regards to exercising and actually over-exercising. I hear a lot of people, some of my friends, working out like 2 hours a day, or working out in the morning and then again at night. We say the more the better, but is there such a thing as over-exercising, and what might be the impact of that on our health?
There absolutely is over-exercising. And a good way to know if you're over-exercising is if you have trouble recovering or you don't feel energized again the next day. So if you're starting to get pains and aches and your joints hurt, or you're very tired the next day, or your muscles don't recover fast enough, that's a sign that you're over-exercising, and you definitely want to pull back on that. And we all have a different level of resilience to handle exercise. Some people that I work with need to just start off with some restorative yoga or walking 5 minutes a day. And then there's other people that can handle high intensity interval training, for an hour in a day. So I think a lot of it goes back to body awareness and figuring out what's right for you and what's right for your body, and not looking out there to see what's right, not looking at those crazy Instagram accounts or the friend that's working out multiple times a day. Okay. The key thing with exercise, and a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, is doing something that you like, that is fun, that you can be consistent with over a very, very long period of time. Doing multiple workouts a day, you can't be consistent with. It's just not sustainable. So if it's, walking 20 minutes every single day the rest of your life versus doing these higher interval training workouts for, a few months, go with the walking 20 minutes a day. It's going to be way better for you over the long run.
My question for you, Josh, was in your communication slide, I believe you mentioned the right way to fast and also caloric restriction. And I was just wondering if you could dive into those.
If I could dive in, that's a big one. How long do we have here?
Kiddie pool. Dive.
So,
2 minutes.
Okay. So I'll tell you everything you need to know about fasting in 2 minutes. Basically, there's been a lot of talk about fasting lately, especially in the health world. The bottom line is we don't know 100% what the best way is for every single person. You sort of have to experiment. A good place to start is doing some intermittent fasting. In other words, making sure that you're eating within a certain window of, say, 8 hours in a 24-hour period and not going outside of that. You could play around with just like skipping breakfast even, and just, still trying to get the typical calories you would get in the other part of the day. And then there's, of course, more serious types of fasting, like 24-hour fast, 36-hour fast, eating 5 days of the week and then not eating 2 days of the week, doing 5-day fasts. So there's a great book by Dr. Jason Fung, which is, I think, the complete guide to fasting, which kind of outlines all the different types of fasts out there. And then you can kind of experiment on yourself. And not all fasts work for all people. So you got to play around with it and see what works for you.
All right. So if you guys want to turn your cameras back on for a quick moment, those of you who are comfortable and ready to do it, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to write down your answer optimally in a dark marker, if possible, so we can see it when you hold it up. But what one tip did you get from Josh's presentation, which was brilliant, by the way?
Thank you, Megan.
No, thank you. Which is one tip you feel like you could actually put in place, or one thing you learned, or something that you felt inspired, maybe in your own life, wasn't even something Josh suggested, but something you took away from it that you could apply in your own life now and ongoing? So write that one down and hold it up.
This is where the rubber meets the road. These things are fun and interesting, but if you don't do the stuff, it doesn't work.
What's it that you say at the end of every podcast?
The best
episode?
way to get started is to get started. So
or knowledge is power. What is that part?
applied knowledge
Yeah.
is where the power is.
All right. So when you're ready, Michelle says all activity counts. Peg has responsibility. Life to your years. I love that one. Best exercise is the one you will do. The bank account concept, more. Think of your body as a bank account. Movement, mindfulness, any form of exercise counts. That one's really hitting home.
Yeah, it's important.
Have to lift weights, weight-bearing activity, daily movement, balance, blood sugar from Alyssa. What else do we have? A sleep routine, I see, from Naomi. Personal choice, eating healthy. Oh, Stacy said personal choice is important. These are all really, really good. 93 supreme grade fuel only. You know what's funny is we didn't start putting that into our car till we bought our car. For the longest time, we were just leasing it. And we were using the cheapest gas, and suddenly it's ours that we own. We're like, we've got this now for the next 20 years, so
Yes.
really we better take
And
better
that's
care
the
of
thing
it.
about the human body. You only get one of them. So put the best stuff in it.
Use it or lose it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, you guys. That was great. One quick mention, Josh has a special offer for his functional reset program. Regular $398, now $98. You'll find that coupon code in the swag bag. And this is a really great one if you need to be sort of, I know many of you are culinary nutrition grads, but if you need that reignition of information, the foundational stuff that really everyone has to do. As we keep saying, resilience is more important now than ever. We need to take care of our health, keep it strong and resilient so that no matter what comes into our environment, our communities, we are able to either not get sick or have that ability to recover.